Speaking about kids, what do you think is the best way for couples to discuss breaking up with their kids?
Well, if it's a healthy relationship, together if you can, and agree it in advance, definitely sit down and say, okay, before we sit there and talk to the kids, let's talk about, what is going to happen. Definitely don't overpromise. Nothing's going to change. Things are going to change. But depending on the age of the kids, younger kids especially, will take their lead from you.
Yeah.
So if you're going into it saying, look, yes, there's going to be some change, but look, you're going to have 2 bedrooms. You get 2 Christmases. You get, I always used to say to my son that Father Christmas comes twice if you're divorced. So you get 2 lots of presents, which was great until we were in the school playground. And I was sitting talking to one of the dads, and his son came out and goes, why don't I get 2 Christmases like Sara's son does? And he was like, what? Because they recently divorced and he was only getting 1 Christmas.
Yeah.
He said, Santa comes twice and you haven't booked it in with him, Daddy.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, oh, sorry about that, Dad. But yeah, I think, kids will take their lead, and there's so many positives from it. And also there's research that shows that kids who've been through some kind of difficulty in their childhood, I'm not talking extreme abuse or real poverty, but have been through some adversity, and they have a role model to show them how to cope with that, actually get through life and make better decisions, because they've understood that sometimes life doesn't work out the way that we want it to. Yeah. And if parents can step up as role models, even if it's just one, you don't need both for this. If you've got one stable parent showing the child that actually, yeah, it is tough, and not hiding those emotions, because if you do, you're teaching them to hide their emotions. So we're saying, look, yeah, Mom, Dad, we're upset, but look what I'm doing to cheer myself up. And that's one of the things that I'm big on my coaches passing on to the kids of anyone that we coach, is that there are coping mechanisms. And now if you look at the rising rate in the US and the UK, all over the world, of teenage suicide, it's because their coping mechanisms tend to come back to self-harm, suicide even, drugs, or bullying online, all those kind of things, rather than how to cheer yourself up, internally, like, putting a smile on your face. Interesting story. My son was in the playground and he had a friend, Charlie. They were playing tag, and Charlie fell over and he grazed his knee and he started crying. And my son was like, come on, Charlie, let's carry on playing. Just do the thing that cheers you up. And we're driving back from school that day, and he said, Mummy, I said it to him, and he looked at me and he said, well, I don't know what that is. He said, so I said, well, stand up, put your shoulders back, put a big smile on your face, and if that doesn't work, 5-star jumps, go. And he did it, and he looked at me and he said, oh, that really works, wow. And my son looked at me, he goes, Mummy, he didn't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, why aren't we teaching this stuff to kids?
Yeah.
Because if they had more healthy coping mechanisms, like, if you're feeling down, get outside, go and connect with nature, or move your body, or change the questions in your head to be more empowering. Those things at school, that kids absorb these things like sponges, right?
Right.
And then when they get older, they can deal with those tough times so much better.
Right. And I love what you're saying. Your son is adorable. But what's interesting, too, is I think so many people, so many women that I know will go home, have their new home with their child, and just be depressed. And that, I think is really hard for kids. I think people really have to remember how much kids internalize stuff, and that when at least you can act that like this was a good thing, this is gonna be good eventually. It's really helpful for kids to get into that place, to know like what you're talking about, that things will get better, that you can find a happy place out of it. But every time you act depressed or angry and speak negatively about your ex, I think that really takes the toll. And then later on, you see that child starting to use those same words.
Absolutely.
And that's really devastating.
Yeah.
For the kid, but also for yourself, to hear those words that your ex called you coming from your child is really toxic.
Yeah.
And can create all sorts of problems. I'm curious about, in this day and age, it's not only about your relationship that kids can see, but how would you deal with separating parents who are dealing with opposing political views? For example, I have a friend, let's say, who has an ex-husband who is very pro-Trump. Didn't believe COVID existed, thought masks made everybody sick, thinks that Joe Biden should be in jail, and then, the mother is just more liberal and just believes, that, things that seemed very normal, but, you know, and not even putting any of that on the child. But every time the child would come home from the ex-spouse's house, it would be, oh, Mom, I'm not wearing a mask, like during COVID. Or, oh, Mom, you know, Joe Biden's a criminal. Or, are you a Republican or a Democrat? You know, and this is not what a 6 or 7-year-old should be saying. What would you say to parents who are not only just having problems personally with each other, but are facing different political views?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because unfortunately we can't control what anyone else does, what they say, or their actions. So trying to change that, just don't waste your time with that.
Right.
So we've got to refocus on what can we control. And that's always the question. You know, well, if this feels like I'm out of control, let's ask ourselves, what can I control with this? Well, you can control what happens in your house and the values and your boundaries, your morals that you create in your own home. And children, especially at that young age, will learn by, you know, when I'm at one parent's, it's like this. When I'm at the other parent's, it's like this. And they'll see they'll learn from what they see and experience. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to combat it by going into it. So you have to kind of go around the houses. So if it's different views or different behaviors, it's like, in our house, this is how it works. So there's no shouting, there's no bullying, there's no being unkind.
Bedtime is at this time.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah. And learning that you can't do that, but hopefully with your strong influence on them, just how you do things and the people you bring into your home and the people you surround with, they'll see as they grow up. They always find, you know, who the rock is, who the stable parent is. They'll always gravitate to that.
Right.
I think, and we can worry a lot about those things, but unfortunately that's something that we can't control, what's going on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, I want to get like 3 tangible tips for people that are trying to get from heartbreak to happiness.
Okay.
What would you suggest they can do?
Yeah, good question. So first one would be, you know, I think you touched on this earlier as well about feeling stuck. And if you are feeling stuck, there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, it might be that you're telling your story over and over again. There's a lot of us, if we're honest, that did that or are doing that.
Of course, yeah.
And it's not just to our friends. It might be the hairdresser or the nail technician.
And no one wants to hear that, by the way. I know it's consuming a lot of us, but no one else cares.
Yeah, no one else really does. So that is one thing. We need to stop telling that story. Still have 1 or 2 people that are constructive, that are helping you and not feeding that for you. But then let's change that narrative to what you're going to do differently and what exciting things are coming up in your life, because that shifts your focus and it still enables your friends and your support team who want to be there and listen, maybe feel they're not being a good friend if they don't ask you. It gives them a different topic to focus on, and helping you move forward is going to be more key. If you haven't got closure, this is one of the things I see all the time. People want to go back to their ex to get the closure. And they're saying, until I know why, I can't move on.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing here is the person that hurt you can never be the person to heal you. That person is you and you alone. So we have to start looking for how we get our closure. And the closure is their lack of accountability, their lack of kindness, their lack of respect, their lack of empathy, their lack of ability to keep your heart safe is your closure. So if you have any of those negative things that have happened with them, that is the reason to say, that is not acceptable behavior in my world. I won't tolerate that. I am worth more. And then focusing your energy on not getting the closure, but how you build your self-worth so you know that you deserve more.
Right.
So that would be something I would definitely suggest.
I love that. Yeah.
And again, you know, like I said, you can't think your way out of overthinking. And if you are in that stage, that also keeps you stuck. So getting outdoors, moving, coming up with something that's going to take you out of your comfort zone, maybe not the rollerblading thing, but do something a bit different that's going to push you outside of your comfort zone, meet new people. Don't be afraid to do that.